Ecofictologists, welcome back to the channel. My name is Lovis and today I am delighted to welcome a very special guest. This is John Burns. Hi John.
Hi there. Thanks for having me.
For being here. John is a self-proclaimed outdoor storyteller and is the author of Skydance, which I reviewed last week. If you haven't seen it yet, go check it out. I enjoyed reading it so much and I've been so excited to talk to you ever since. So thank you again.
Great. Okay, looking forward to it.
For the viewers who missed the review last week or are new to the channel, do you want to give us a brief, preferably spoiler-free summary of what Skydance is all about?
Yeah, Skydance is a comic novel at its heart, and it's set in the Highlands of Scotland, and it really follows the adventures of two hill walkers and climbers who go into the Highlands, into the mountains of Scotland, and they stay in bothies, rudimentary shelters that we have here, and they gradually become aware of the kind of real damage that's been done to our Highland environment, and they decide to take up the cause of rewilding the links, and they have a lot of adventures. And if I said any more, it would spoil it. So I think we'll leave it there.
And you are yourself part of the hill walker community. I'm sure a lot of your own love for the Highlands is reflected in the book. You did a podcast episode where you kind of introduced Skydance and talked about your motivations for writing it. And there you mentioned how much the Highlands have changed over the years that you've been walking through them. Can you give us an idea of some of those changes, what you've been seeing?
Well, it's I guess the truth, to be honest, is that the Highlands haven't changed that much, in the sense that they are very much as they were when I began hill walking. And the problem with that is that anyone coming to the Highlands, I think, would think that they've stumbled upon a wild, beautiful landscape. And it certainly is beautiful, there's no question about that. But wild it is not. The Highlands that we have here today are the result of the way that they have been exploited, really, for different kinds of hunting, and they're overgrazed, their forests are destroyed, and the kind of animals that should be living there, like the lynx, like the beaver, are absent, or largely absent anyway. So so you're looking at, I think the best way of describing it is as a wet desert. The Highlands are in fact a green desert, and what I wanted to do through Skydance really was, there are a lot of very good, very well written, very knowledgeable books, much more knowledgeable than my books, written about the process of rewilding and the kind of environment that we could have in the Highlands, but they tend to be very academic. And I wanted to write a book really that would speak to the average hill walker, the guy in the street or the guy on the hill or whatever, the guy sitting in the bothy, and would bring to them an awareness of the kind of issues that there are around.
And in Skydance, the landowners are portrayed quite like cartoonish villains, which made me laugh quite a lot.
Yes,
I had so much fun reading those chapters. They were just hilarious. I wonder if you just added that in for the humor aspect, or if you really think that the landowners are the biggest kind of roadblock to rewilding the Highlands.
Oh, that's a big question. I mean, you know, Lord Purdy is a caricature. He's a cartoon, as you quite rightly say. But he's not that far from the truth. Certainly 20 or 30, 40 years ago, there would have been a lot of Lord Purdys about. It's not so much the individuals that I'm against. What it is that we have what we're seeing is the beginning of a cultural and political change in the Highlands. It's a very strange thing to me. The way our land is managed was decided by punch-ups that took place hundreds of years ago. That's crazy. Look, what I object to, not so much as sort of a landed gentry, but the fact that there are individuals within Scotland. In Scotland has the greatest concentration of land ownership in the smallest number of of hands in Europe. So nowhere else is land ownership so concentrated in a few people. There are literally people who own hundreds of square miles, and largely, to be honest, they can largely do what they like with it. And that's what I object to. There are some great, it's changing. We're at a really fascinating point in the development of our landscape, in that it is beginning to change. There are new landowners coming in who don't have the sort of culture of deer stalking and grouse moor management, and they're beginning to look towards rewilding as a way to go with the landscape. So it is changing.
And do you think raising awareness with the public on conservation issues through like about the hen harrier or the lynx or reintroduction plans is going to be really crucial in the next couple of years?
I think the thing that counts is political will. Part of the reason that I wrote Skydance was one of the interesting things is that the lynx has almost completely dropped out of the popular imagination. When I first heard about rewilding the lynx, it came as a surprise to me. I thought, were lynx part of our landscape once? And it turns out, of course, there were. There are no stories have come down through the years. There's lots of mostly erroneous stuff talked about the last wolf, and we have stories that we tell our children about bears and all kinds of creatures like that. But as far as lynx are concerned, it's as if they never existed. So one of the things I wanted to do was to try to get lynx back in to the popular imagination. The major problem, obviously, between reintroducing beaver and reintroducing lynx is that lynx are carnivores. So there's a big difference in bringing back, in the popular imagination anyway, in bringing a carnivore, a predator, into the landscape. Because we're used to walking around being the top predator, nobody bothers us. But lynx wouldn't bother humans either. But people don't know that, they don't understand that, and I think it's important that we start to tell stories, because stories change people's minds. I think if you want to change someone's mind, it's pretty difficult to do that by discussing things. Actually, by presenting facts does nothing really. But if you can engage their imagination, if that is when, that's how to change people's mind, how to bring rewilding issues and creatures like the lynx into their consciousness.
You did an interview with David Hetherington on your podcast Outside In on reintroducing the lynx, and you talked about this, and he said that conducting the reintroduction of the lynx through the media might not be the best way to do it, that he would suggest a slower approach. So maybe, representing it in fiction is kind of a gentler way of bringing it to the public's attention. Maybe people are more receptive to lessons that they read in a book rather than what they see on the news.
Yeah, I don't know. One of the problems is that our social media is very bad. We all use social media now, perhaps more than the traditional TV or radio or something like that. It's an interplay. But the problem with social media is that it's very, very bad at presenting complex and multi-layered arguments. What it tends to do is polarize people and end up as a shouting shop. And that, I think that's what David was meaning, really, that when he was talking about the media. The media does that as well. Newspapers will tend to take a sensationalist stance, and they'll find a farmer who will say this is the end of farming or whatever, and present that. So yeah, I hope that if you can, I suppose what I try and do with fiction is to kind of whisper in the ear of the reader. And when they come away from it, I hope, and that's indeed some readers have said to me they have done, they've gone away to read David Hetherington's book, The Lynx and Us, or they've gone on to read other books about rewilding, rebirding, and things like that. You know, which that's great. That's great. If I, if the book, and even in some small way, leads to a lynx being wild in the Highlands, or indeed anywhere in Britain, then it's achieved an amazing thing.
Well, I don't think anyone could read Skydance and not laugh because it is packed full of humor.
I hope so. Yeah, I hope so.
Oh, it really is. I had such a good time reading it. Do you think humor is important in getting these kinds of messages about rewilding and the destruction of our environment and the major issues that we're facing?
Yeah, I think it's important that we. Well, one of the things I suppose that I try and do is, I think life has become incredibly serious. We've got a really serious issue at the moment with COVID, but if it isn't even for that, we're living pretty dark times in a way. And what I wanted to bring back in my writing really is the kind of enjoyment and the sort of fun that I have in being out in wild places. And a lot of that is partly the ability to laugh at yourself, and we're kind of losing that a bit. We're kind of becoming incredibly serious. And so really, what I was trying to get across with the humor side of it, this should be enjoyable. This should be fun. We don't have to live in a risk assessed and regulated environment all the time. You can actually get away, because that, at the end of it, that's actually what life's about. That being in places and enjoying each day that you have. That's what life's about. Not arguing about Brexit. We probably have to do both, maybe. But
yeah. Were you aware of the term ecofiction when you wrote the book, or did you come across it when you marketed it?
No, this is the first time I've heard of it, actually. It's an interesting point, that, because there is, in a way, if you like, I suppose, anti-ecofiction out there as well, because an awful lot of the myths and legends that are still told actually in the Highlands about creatures like wolves paint them as very dangerous, destructive creatures, and have actually really do damage the potential for wolves to be rewilded. If you talk to the average Joe Soap in the street, he's going to think a wolf is a pretty dangerous animal. They're not going to be concerned about that. So actually, there's we do need ecofiction to perhaps bring a bit of reality and a balance into the view that many people have of a wilder environment.
You've touched on this a little bit, but what made you switch to fiction for Skydance when you'd already had 2 successful non-fiction books?
So I decided that I wanted to get into fiction, to talk about the kind of things that I wanted to talk about, and so started and so went into Skydance. And fiction allows you to move in different directions, and of course you can't. There's only a certain amount you can do, so it's very difficult to keep writing books about walks you've done or climbs you've done. A lot of outdoor authors have this problem, that you get to a stage where there's only a certain amount you can write. So I wanted to move off in a different direction, which Skydance certainly did.
Yeah, I've heard you mention before that the kind of journey of Angus, the character in Skydance, kind of mirrors yours a little bit as he becomes more and more aware of what's happening in the Highlands and the nature around him.
That's right. Well, it's interesting. I was coming up on the train from Edinburgh, and there was a woman sat opposite me as the train rolled through the mountains and the green hills of the Highlands, And she said to me, "Oh, isn't this magnificent?" And I could have said to her, "Well, it depends what you see. What you see is a wild natural landscape, and what I see now is a damaged and scarred environment, bereft of the kind of wildlife that it should have. So I see destruction and you see nature." And that's kind of what's happened to me over the last few years. When I used to see I used to admire the landscape. Well, the difficult bit is you can't unsee that. Once you
No.
see the scars that are there, it's forever with you. You forever look at a landscape and think that's not the way it should be. Yeah, that's essentially what happened to Angus. It is. That's what happened to Angus. And once he started to see it, he couldn't unsee it.
Yeah, can't unring that bell. Yeah, I just actually only have one question left for you, and I know that you said you
okay.
don't you weren't aware of the term ecofiction, but do you have any recommendations of other fiction that you think represent nature or the environment or conservation in an interesting way?
Oh, any fiction? That's quite difficult. There is not a lot. I mean, obviously, going back years, there's Ring of Bright Water, Gavin Maxwell's book, which I hope that I can do for the lynx what his did for the otter. I doubt it, but that's what it's like.
Well, that about wraps us up in terms of the interview, John. Thank you so much for taking the time
thank you.
to talk to me and to appear on the channel. I've really enjoyed our chat. Where can people go to find out more about you and find the book and about
find out more about me? But probably visit my website, johndburns.com. The D is really important. There's other John Burns is about, but I've got the D, you know. And you mentioned earlier there's my podcast, and what I'm trying to do, my podcast started out very much talking to mountaineers about their books, but more recently I've been trying to bring guests on board who can talk about the environmental issues and about rewilding. Hence I had David Hetherington, and I've had Peter Kearns from Scotland, the Big Issue. I think it's Peter. Yeah, it is Peter. And a few other people who've been talking about their concerns about the environmental issues. And I'm hoping to get Benedict MacDonald on.
Okay. Right. So all that's left is for me to thank you again and say see you next week, ecofictologists.
Thank you.